Joining us via Zoom from Sydney is our regular contributor to The Informer. Her name is Angela Vithoulkas. Angela, welcome. The week has been a busy one, especially for all those insurance companies that have had to cope with this backlog of COVID claims. What's the latest? What's the fallout?
Well, I haven't quite brought out the Kleenex box for the big insurance companies, George, but they're in a bit of trouble. They lost a case in the New South Wales Court of Appeal last week. The court unanimously ruled against them, and therefore they're going to have to do a big payout to their small business interruption claims. Now, the irony here is that, and in fact, it's mostly Melbourne where some of these claims have come from. There's 100,000 small business claims originating from around the Melbourne area, or the state rather, and they've put in their claims. Insurance companies have said, no, we're not covering you for business interruption, but the small business owners are standing strong. Now, the Insurance Council of Australia's realised that there's some issues surrounding the Biosecurity Act and the Quarantine Act and the wording of the insurers' policies. And that's why this case went up to the New South Wales Court of Appeal.
The wording, the fine print, that's been the backbreaker of so many contracts and so many deals and so many insurance claims over the years. It's extraordinary to think that they've been caught short.
Well, George, when COVID first came to Australia and businesses were forced to shut down, ironically, the first phone call I made was to my insurance broker to get some clarity because, as you know, I represent and advocate for small businesses around Australia. And I said, are they going to be covered by BI, which is business interruption insurance? And he laughed at me. Now, I rang him yesterday and I said, should I be laughing at you? Because you told me we wouldn't be covered, and I'm telling you the Court of Appeal unanimously said we have to be. Now, the media is reporting that this is, and I quote unquote, a monumental balls up by the insurance companies because they've lapsed in actually repairing the wording and having it match the legislation, the Act of the Biosecurity Act and the Quarantine Act.
Like so much in our lives, nothing is black and white. Is there an appeal in process?
They're not sure yet. So IAG isn't sure yet whether they are going to take up the appeal, because in order to have an appeal, you have to have grounds. And with 5 unanimous votes from the judges in New South Wales, they may not have grounds for the appeal. But IAG called a halt to their trading on ASX last week as well to do a capital raising. They've put aside the money. There's going to be another case going up soon, and that apparently could involve QBE. Now, if these companies, insurance companies, have to pay out, some of them might actually collapse and go broke, particularly if they've got a lot of exposure to America or Europe. Now, London's already had a case brought up. Those insurance companies in England are going to have to pay because their wording is even worse than the Australian insurers. So this is going to go on for quite some time, George, and there's hope for those small businesses that they might be able to follow through on their claims.
I hear you and I rejoice on one level, but I also fear a dread. I feel this dread coming because insurance companies, they go under. That's not a good thing because
it's
someone else, much worse to come. So what can we expect? What's your reading of the play?
I would be shocked if they lost their appeal again, because there's so much at stake around the economy, and the fact then that if some of these claims are not just knocked back, but if the insurance company goes broke, so many other people who have paid for their policies on other things like fire, flood, theft, etc., they'll lose their cover as well. And the interesting thing is that there are some claims now, because there were some small businesses in Australia who went through the fire season and lost their businesses from the fire, but then had to also put in a claim around COVID, and the insurance companies are reneging on those claims as well, saying, well, you can't claim business interruption even though you lost your business in the fire because COVID came and you wouldn't have had a business either. So it's going to get very nitpicky, George. There's going to be rebellion. I hope to see marching in the streets because I'll be the first one at the front of the line with my placard.
Angela Vithoulkas is our contributor on The Informer. She doesn't miss a beat. And as you've heard, she's been following this story from go to woe. And you didn't mention, what was your insurance broker's response when you said, should I be laughing at you?
He said, "Oh, things aren't that simple, Ange. There's worse to come yet." And I said, "Well, it might be your job, but there's worse to come yet."
Should we talk about the super guarantee rate, or we leave that for another time?
We'll quickly cover it.
Go on.
We've got the government behind businesses very quickly. They're not going to be raising the superannuation guarantee as far as employers' contribution. It was looking to go to 12% by 2025. There's strong data showing that that's not going to make an overall difference in the retirement of people later on in life, but it will make a big difference to employers and employees and the wage and employment factor in Australia, because that would see a 30% increase from the part of employers. So that's a little bit of good news for businesses.
Yeah, look, the imposts are lining up at the moment for businesses, and
Right.
Lord knows they need assistance. And the other thing that I was going to say to you with the insurance claims, again, we must not forget the role that government has played in all of this. And I mean governments across the world. When they pulled the pin and went into that stall mode or that major disruption mode, this is where the claim should be going. I mean, I think the story is far from finished, but I thank you very much for giving us the lowdown.
Good to join you.
All done. Angela Vithoulkas promises we'll be back next week, has much more to offer us. Thank you, Angela.